In this video, we will be using our factoring techniques to solve quadratic equations. A quadratic equation is one that has an x squared. This is a standard form of a quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c. So notice we no longer just have an x, we have that x squared. That makes it quadratic. The steps in order to solve a quadratic equation by the factoring method is we want it in standard form. It needs to be in descending order and it must equal to 0. The next step is to factor. Remember, we always want to look for that GCF. It may be the difference of two squares, but most of the time it's just a trinomial. But it could involve other types of factoring that we have learned thus far. Then we need to set each factor that has a variable in it equal to 0, and then solve each resulting linear equation, because once we have factored it, we've gone from x squared to just x. So let's just go through a problem. Number 1, negative 14x squared plus 21x equals to 0. It's in standard form. It's not a trinomial, but it's still in standard form because it has x squared x, and the key part is that it's equal to 0. So as I start to factor, I notice it has a GCF of 7x. But because this leading term is negative, I'm going to factor out a negative 7x. So I'm going to divide each of these by negative 7x. And that leaves me 2x minus 3 equal to 0. Now I'm going to set each factor that has a variable, and I have two factors. They both involve an x, and I'm going to set those equal to 0. Now the reason why this works is because if this part is equal to 0, 0 times anything is 0. And on the other hand, if this one is 0, then 0 times anything is still 0. That only works when it's equal to 0. So let's go ahead and do the last step, solve each resulting linear equation. So here I'm going to divide by negative 7, x is equal to 0. And here I'm going to add 3, and then I'm going to divide by 2. A quadratic equation, in other words, a second degree equation, will always have two answers. Now sometimes those two answers are the same number, but a second degree equation always has two answers. So let's look at the second problem. Again, we want to check to see if it's in standard form, and it is. It's equal to 0. So the second step is usually the hardest, is to factor. So I notice they're all even, so I'm going to factor out a 2. And then I have a trinomial, so I'm going to use my guess and check method. I know 6 is either 2 and 3 or 1 and 6, but thankfully 5 is just 5 and 1. So I'm not going to forget my 2. And I'm going to try 2x and 3x first. Let's see, I'm going to put my 5 here and 1 here. And so that's 3x, that's 10x. Oh, well, if both of them are negative, I get negative 13x. But I need to check my signs. A negative 1 times a negative 5 is a positive 5, so that is not correct factoring. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase, and I'm going to try to, and I'm going to switch the 5 and the 1. So I'm going to put the 5 here and the 1 here. Let's see if this works. This is 15x, that's 2x. If I make that negative and that positive, I get negative 13x. So I need a negative here and a positive there. And again, checking those signs, a negative times a positive gives me that negative 5. So now that's factored correctly. So let's go to the third step. Set each factor that has a variable in it, because that's what we're solving for, equal to 0. Even though 2 is a factor, it doesn't involve our variable, and 2 just doesn't equal to 0. So we can kind of just ignore that. But let's take the other two factors. We have 2x minus 5 is equal to 0, and 3x plus 1 is equal to 0, and I need to solve each of those equations. So I'm going to add 5, and then I'm going to divide by 2. Here I'm going to subtract 1 and divide by 3. So again, I have two answers for my quadratic equation. You could check your answer by substituting those values of x back in here for x, but sometimes that's almost harder than working out the problem. So I would just suggest you go through and check your steps, your work, your positives and negatives, and have confidence that you've worked the problem correctly. Let's look at this third example. Is this in standard form? Well, it's not equal to 0, so it's definitely not in standard form. So what can we do? Well, we have parentheses, so let's go ahead and distribute and get rid of those parentheses. So we have x squared plus 8x. Still not in standard form. I've got to get it equal to 0. So I think I'm going to take everything to the left. So I'm going to subtract 1x squared, and I'm going to subtract 8x. Now notice, on the right-hand side, that's 0, that's 0, that's 0. That's the important thing. We have to have 0. Over here we have 4x squared. But that's also 0. But don't forget the minus 1. So that's in standard form. 4x squared minus 1 is equal to 0. I'm ready to factor that. Not a GCF, not a trinomial, but it is the difference of two squares. So I know 2 times 2 is 4, and 1 times 1 is 1, and I need a positive and a negative. Now I need to set each factor equal to 0, and now I need to solve. So I'm going to subtract 1 and divide by 2. And here I'm going to add 1 since it was negative, and I'm going to divide by 2. So once again, I have two answers for my quadratic equation. Let's look at the last example. It's definitely not in standard form. So just like in the last problem, I have parentheses, so I need to multiply that out. So I'm going to FOIL it out, get x squared minus 4x plus 4x minus 16. And I want to collect like terms before I start moving things, and I notice that that equals to 0. Next thing, I think I want to have my 0 on my right hand side, so I'm going to subtract x squared and I'm going to add 16. Now keep up with that equal sign. It should drop right down your page, and then that's 0, that's 0, that's 0, so everything is a 0 on that right hand side. Now let's see, we've got 6x squared plus 23x plus 20. Need to start factoring it. I don't see a GCF, so I'm going to write down my possibilities for 6. 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Ooh, 20. 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 times 5. Lots of guesses. But I always like to start with the smaller numbers first. So I'm going to try 2x and 3x. So let's try with the 4 and the 5. I can't put the 4 with the 2 because they have a common factor. So let's try the 5 here and the 4 there. And since everything is positive, I know that's positive. Let's see if I got lucky. That's 15x. That's 8x. That's 23x. That's good. So I know that is factored correctly. If the 4 and 5 had not worked, I tried the 2 and the 10, the 1 and 20. None of that worked. I try the 1 and 6 and all of those. The good news is that if I ask you to solve something by factoring, it's not going to be prime. You're going to be able to factor it. So let's see. We've now factored it. Now set each factor that has a variable equal to 0. Well, I have two factors, 2x plus 5. I need to set that equal to 0, and 3x plus 4 is equal to 0, and I want to solve. So here I want to subtract 5 and divide by 2. Here I want to subtract 4 and divide by 3. And once again, I have two solutions for my second degree equation, otherwise known as a quadratic. So just to review, If you want to solve a quadratic equation by factoring, you want to write it in standard form. You've got to factor it. You want to set each factor equal to 0 and then solve. And if you have a second degree equation, you're going to have two answers.